What's all this about the story of stolen Nazi treasure allegedly buried in Austria near the end of World War II and still undiscovered? Today, this treasure is estimated to have a value of over $50 million American dollars. Well, in this episode of What's All This, we go back to the end of World War II. On April 1945, during the final days of the Nazi Empire. Despite desperate measures taken by the German army's last defenders, the full force of the combined Allied forces were now closing in on the last pockets of German resistance. The end of World War II and all of its horrors were about to be finished. As the Allies advanced into Germany, they discovered many treasures had been plundered by the Nazis' former conquests. Nazi leaders had been busy hiding the treasure they had confiscated over the previous 6 years of war. This included art, silver, artifacts from museums, and tons of gold, stashed away in various secure locations including fortifications, caves, mines, or sunken lakes. In the ensuing months that following the Germans having surrendered, billions of dollars in riches all over Europe were recovered. While the bulk of these stolen treasures was recovered, but there is still an estimated $37 billion American dollars worth of treasure still waiting to be recovered. This is the focus of this episode of What's All This, where we consider the whereabouts of a major stash of gold bars. From 1933 to 1945, Nazi Germany and its collaborators established a vast network of over 44,000 camps and incarceration sites, including ghettos. These served multiple horrific purposes. Millions were forced into brutal labor, imprisoned as enemies of the regime, or systematically murdered. Dachau was the first and longest-running camp, and stands as a chilling symbol of this system of persecution and extermination. We now focus on the Buchenwald concentration camp. Established on Ettersberg Hill, near Weimar, Germany, which was established in July 1937. It was one of the first and the largest of the concentration camps with Germany's 1937 borders. It turns out human misery was not the only activity going on at Dachau. It was also utilized to store a multi-million-dollar Nazi treasure. Today's episode of What's All This begins at this point due to Edward G. Greger, a U.S. Army officer stationed in Germany and Austria in the post-war era and was involved in analyzing wartime atrocities. Edward Greger was a man of keen intellect and a thirst for historical truth. As such, Edward Greger recognized the weight of an Austrian physician, Drive Wilhelm Gross, who treated imprisoned Nazi criminals after the war was concluded. In 1952, Dr. Gross shared details with Edward Greger that related to details of a considerable treasure that was plundered at the end of World War II. Dr. Gross had acquired the information from the confessions of a tried and convicted SS officer, condemned to death directly to Dr. Wilhelm Gross, who was treating him due to illness. The SS officer discussed with Gross full details of the contents of the treasure, how it was smuggled out of Dachau, and where the buried treasure was concealed. Intrigued by the possibility of not only recovered loot, but also a deeper understanding, Of the Nazi regime's final days, Gregor conducted in-depth interviews with Dr. Gross and meticulously documented Dr. Gross's account. With this documented record, the legend of the Dachau treasure transcended to becoming a potential key to unlocking an intriguing wartime secret. According to the SS officer Dr. Gross was treating, gold and treasure was stolen from the prisoners that had been relocated to the concentration camp at Dachau, and over the years of World War II, this had accumulated to a huge cache of wealth. According to Dr. Gross, as the tides of war began to turn in favor of the Allies, it became clear that the treasures accumulated at Dachau would be lost to the Allies once the Dachau camp was captured. Therefore, the commandant of Dachau and 3 others loaded the treasure into 4 large boxes which appeared to be consistent with ammunition boxes according to the size. The booty contained within the boxes included jewelry, rare stamps, artifacts, and gold bars. It appears the gold bars had been smelted from whatever gold was stolen, including gold fillings from the teeth of the ill-fated prisoners. In terms of today's worth, the contents of the 4 boxes would amount to be worth at least a staggering 50 million American dollars. According to Dr. Grosch's informant, the plan of the 4 SS officers was to secretly transport the treasure in German armored vehicles away from Dachau on a journey that would take several days. Their escape route, the SS officer claimed, began with a stealthy departure from the confines of the camp itself. They would then disappear into the dark of night, around Munich, before slipping into Austria. Their path would then take them through the imposing Arlberg Pass, a formidable mountain barrier leading towards the quaint township of Brand. Nestled near Brand, the officer disclosed, lay a picturesque mountain lake known as the Lunar Sea. This idyllic setting, bordering Switzerland, was chosen by the 4 SS men as their ideal hiding place. They believed the lake's serene beauty, devoid of any notoriety, would be the perfect cloak for their ill-gotten gains. Dr. Gross further revealed the officer's claim regarding the treasure's final resting place. The 4 conspirators, bound by a pact of secrecy, decided to bury the loot for separate boxes, exactly halfway between the only structure in the vicinity, which was a small solitary hut, and a brook flowing across the lake. This spot, precisely halfway between these 2 landmarks, would be their secret vault. Allied forces were now only days away from Dachau, yet this isolated region was away from civilization and would be far from prying eyes. It seemed the perfect hiding place, not be an area that would attract the focus of the enemy. Therefore, once the treasure was buried, the 4 SS officers then escaped through the Swiss border and went their separate ways, planning one day to regather and return to collect the treasure. 3 of them left and headed into Switzerland. The 4th person went back down into the valley to return to his family. Dr. Gross said this 4th officer was captured, and it was. While awaiting execution, this SS officer had revealed the secrets of the treasures. The officer's 3 companions were never heard of again, so their circumstances remain undetermined. But just as the treasure hunt might have begun, fate intervened. Firstly, Dr. Gross, under mysterious circumstances, disappeared before any official investigation could occur, and this information was only privy to Edward Gregor. Secondly, in 1956, a dam construction project vastly altered the Lunar Sea, burying the treasure under 75 feet of water. 34 years later, in the summer of 1990, after an especially dry period, the dam had been depleted to such a level that it was close to its original depth in 1945. As there was also now a severe drought, this resulted in the water level dropping to an all-time low. Edward G. Gregor and an associate, armed with information culled from Dr. Gross' personal papers, now ventured to the lunar sea. They explored the treasure's assumed location by using coordinates from a map which had been drafted by Dr. Gross. Sadly, though the area was not as simple as a large letter X on a map, the general area was quite large. And after decades of submersion, the dried-up lake bed was difficult to explore. After an exhaustive search, they had to concede that with their limited equipment they had not been successful in locating the treasure. This raises two questions. Did the 3 other Nazi SS officers recover the treasure? Edward Gregor feels this is unlikely. By the time it would have been safe to return, because by then the treasure was submerged under 75 feet of water. Or could Dr. Gross' story be just that, a story? Documents presented in a 1946 war crimes trial help us to appreciate there is indeed substantial basis for hope. These documents support that the treasure certainly did exist. Within the archives, Edward Gregor discovered testimony from a Robert W. Kesting, who was a federal employee. He had interrogated a Joseph Gerolin, who was tried, convicted, and executed for atrocities committed while he was in the capacity of subcommandant of Dachau. According to his testimony and statements from other sources, the head commandant of Dachau, Frederick Viter, had been involved in a conspiracy to smuggle a treasure from inside the camp. One witness said that he saw Frederick Viter supervising the loading of army vehicles with valuables from the storage areas. According to testimony from others, Frederick Viter was witnessed leaving the Dachau in one of those vehicles that had been loaded. Frederick Viter was also later observed by other SS personnel traveling in the general direction of the Swiss border. Additional testimony from Joseph Gerolin confirmed there were other German personnel who had assisted in removing the treasures from Dachau. It was confirmed approximately $5 million American dollars in today's equivalent American values of gold Reichsmarks was taken in valuables. Edward Gregor, fueled by a conviction that bordered on obsession, was certain Joseph Gerolin was not just another patient of Dr. Gross, but the condemned SS officer who spilled the beans on the lunar sea treasure. This revelation, revealed at a time when the certainty of death prompted a confession, became Gregor's personal mission. He yearned to not only recover the stolen wealth, but importantly to ensure it served a purpose far removed from its dark origins. The treasure itself remains frustratingly elusive. Submerged beneath the lunar sea's ever-changing water levels, it taunted Gregor with its inaccessibility. Yet, every time the water level dipped, a flicker of hope rekindled within him. He envisioned a future expedition, a chance to finally pry the Nazi loot from its watery grave. But Gregor's vision extended beyond mere recovery. He saw the potential for a profound act of redemption. In his mind's eye, the millions the lunar sea treasure might fetch could be used to heal, not harm. He envisioned a fund dedicated to providing medical care for the needy, a stark counterpoint to the suffering inflicted by the Nazis. For Gregor, the treasure, if ever recovered, wouldn't just be a historical footnote. It would be a symbol of healing and a testament to the enduring power of compassion in the face of unimaginable evil. So, we wait for the lunar sea's secrets to be revealed, for a chance to rewrite the narrative of the Dachau treasure. Ultimately, it's not just about the valuable treasure. It's about wresting a semblance of good from the clutches of a terrible past.
Thank you for listening. Please join me next time when we will delve into another episode.